friends, this is Christopher Davis-Shannon, and today I want to talk about Campanella style playing on ukulele. Now, before you run away because your only goal on playing uke is just to strum some basic chords, that's also what this video is about. We're not just going to talk about what Campanella style playing is, but how it can be beneficial to you no matter what your goals on the instrument are. So the first question is, what the heck is campanella? Campanella is an Italian word for little bell, and this is actually a technique that dates back hundreds of years in the guitar world. This is not just a ukulele style of playing. This goes back to Renaissance and Baroque guitar, which at times were also re-entrant tuned instruments, much like this little guy here, meaning that we have a high G string on it. The goal of campanella style playing is rather simplistic. We want to avoid playing consecutive notes on the same string. And what this does is it gets us around a little bit of a problem that we have on uke and also on old guitars. You see, uke has nylon strings on it. These old guitars had gut strings. And especially with the short scale of a ukulele, we have a problem that we just don't have a whole lot of sustain, and playing notes next to each other on the same string shortens that even more. So by not utilizing consecutive notes on the same string, we can allow the notes to ring out a little bit longer and let them run into each other, giving us this nice harmonious effect. Now, this style of playing is utilized almost exclusively in fingerstyle music, so if you're not going to play solo pieces on uke, why should you care? And that's a very, very valid question. But no matter the goals of my students, I make each of them learn how to play in campanella style for this one simple reason. If we think back to why we started to play uke, I would bet for 99% of us, the reason is not because we wanted to play uke. It's because we want to play music. And ultimately, any instrument, ukulele included, is really just a tool that we are learning how to play to convey music to other people. So ultimately, even if we're just going to strum some chords down here, we really want to understand how to play this instrument. And one of the things that is very hard to get our heads around is where the notes are on this instrument, because unlike a piano, this is not laid out linearly. It doesn't just go up as we go up the scale. Especially with high G, you can see that sometimes we need to go backwards to go up. But by learning our entire fingerboard, we can see all of the possibilities that we have to play any given note and thus any given chord around that note, giving us a greater facility on the instrument itself. If we think about just the note C, the third space on our musical staff, if we saw that printed, we would generally play the third fret of our A string. But that same exact note in the same exact octave is also on the 5th fret of our G string, or the 8th fret of our E string, or the 12th fret of our C string. So which one are we supposed to play? And the answer is that, well, it depends where we're coming from, where we're going to, and what works best in that context. The second reason that you should learn how to play in a campanella style, even if it's something that you feel like you're never truly going to utilize on the instruments, from a fingerstyle perspective, it creates new challenges for us. And overcoming challenges is one of the ways that we truly learn how to play an instrument. And what do I mean by that with the right hand? As I said before, this is not a linear instrument. The notes don't just go up and down. They're located at different points on the fingerboard, and we have options. And with that, just because we are going up a scale does not mean that our right hand is going to just go across the strings and up. We can create new right hand patterns that force us to think differently and outside the box about the right hand fingerings we are using by utilizing campanella techniques. So let's look at how to put this in practice now. What I've done is I've arranged two versions of the song You Are My Sunshine, which I think a vast majority of my subscribers know and love this tune. So first, let's look at this and let's just play it as if it were written in notation and what we would logically play on the instrument. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So as we look at this first version, this is logically what we would play if we were just presented with standard notation. As the notes go up the scale, we go up to the next string, we go up the fingerboard, and just play the notes as they are written. So let's put this in a campanella context and see some different fingerings and some different voicings that we can use for each of these notes to give us a more open sound. So if we look at the first measure of this, we're playing C, F, G. So the open C string, this is in fact the only place we can play this on a high G uke. We have no other option for this note. The F on the first fret of our E string, we're going to leave this here as our only other option is going to be on our C string, and we'll get there quite soon. And then we have a G followed by an A next. And if you think back to when you were learning the instrument, these are both open strings. Whenever we have the opportunity to use open strings, it's going to give us more sustain than a fretted note. And we should use that opportunity whenever we can. So here's our first few notes. It's going to sound like this. If you listen really closely, all 4 strings should be ringing when you're done that first lick. Now our next note is another A, and we already said we don't want to have 2 consecutive notes on the same string. So what happens when we have a repeated note? We need to find it elsewhere on the fingerboard. And in this case, we're going to put it on the 5th fret of our E string. Same exact note. Then we're going to go right back to our open A. We're going to play that essentially 3 times in a row. Slide that pinky down to a G sharp on the 4th fret of your E string. We're going back to an A, but since we just played this open A, we're going to let that continue ringing out. We're going to find a different location for the A. And we can do that on the 2nd fret of our G string. Same exact note, right? So now we have 3 options for that A that we can play. And then we return right back to an F. And again, we're going to have 2 consecutive Fs. So where else can we place this F? And with this note, we only have one other option on the fingerboard. That is the 5th fret of our C string. So let's listen to just these first few bars and try this new fingering. And note that I'm leaving my left hand fingers down as long as possible to aid in just having more sustain. As we look at the end of the next bar, that's really the same thing. We have F, G, A. So we'll do that exactly the same. The first fret of our E string, open G, open A. And now we're going up to a B flat at this point. And a B flat we would typically play on the 1st fret of our A string. But we have other options here, and they might set us up to make better choices for the next few notes as well. So we're going to move this up the fingerboard and play it on the 6th fret of our E string. You can see that's the same exact note as the 1st fret of our A string. And the reason that we're doing this, and I'll use my 2nd finger for this, is our next note is a D, which we were previously playing on the 5th fret of our A string, right? But we're actually going to play this now on the 7th fret of our G string. And why is that? Because we have to repeat that D in a moment. So for the 2nd D, we can use our standard one, the 5th fret of our A string. And then as we're putting this 5th fret down, what we can do is bar across our 5th fret, because we're going to put the C, that would typically be on the 3rd fret of our A string, we're now going to put it on the 5th fret of the G string. We're going back down to that B flat, right? It's still under our 6th fret of the E string, and then we can just resolve to an open A. So let's listen to this little passage here. All right, so we don't even have to move. We're all in one position for this. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to place this F elsewhere, which is going to be on the 5th fret of our C string, because we're already in this position, right? Why should we shift back down to this F if we don't need to? We're sitting right here with the open A. We're going right back to this B flat in a second. So let's play the F with our 1st finger on the 5th fret of our C string. And the lick's exactly the same as what we did previously walking up to that B flat, right? We have a G and then an A. so that we can use those open strings again. We're just changing the first note to the F on the 5th fret of our C string. Our B flat still on the 6th fret of our E string. But now we're going to go up and use that D on the 5th fret. This is one of my favorite things about Campanella style playing, is that there's not a correct way necessarily to finger any of these. We have multiple correct options, and they force us to think differently about solving the same problem. So as we play this D on the 5th fret of our A string, we'll play the second D on the 10th fret of our E string. Then we can play the C again on the 5th fret of our G string, but then our B flat, instead of coming down to the 6th fret, let's try a different place. How about the 10th fret of our C string? Right? It's the same exact note. We have multiple locations we can play this, but we're already up in this position, so let's play it there. And then we go to an open A again, and this is going to give us time to shift back down now. So we'll resolve to that F on the 5th fret of our C string. So while this is the same passage, we're just addressing it in a different way to challenge ourselves. So let's look at the last little lick here, and then we'll play all of this together with tabs so that you can follow along. So we go back and we have really the same starting lick. We have F, G, A. That'll be exactly the same as we've always played it, because we want to utilize those open strings. But then we have a B flat, and since we just played an A here, doesn't make sense to shift up to the 6th fret of our E, does it? Or the 10th fret of our C string for that matter. But we can play it on the 3rd fret of our G string. There's our B flat. Same exact note, right? There it is. And then we're going to a G now. We don't have our open G, but we can play that G on the 3rd fret of our E string. Right back to an open G, open A, and then C. So here's our last little lick here, so you can hear how this all goes. And at the end, we have all 4 strings ringing out. So let's give this all a shot together with the tabs so you can try these new fingerings and challenge yourself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. I hope that y'all have really enjoyed this lesson, and think of it as more of an exercise in problem solving than even learning a new technique. Challenge yourself this week and try to find some new fingerings for this song that I didn't show you. There are more, and it's up to you to work that out.